We are recording. Recording is in progress. It is 7:01. I am Chip Meehan, Chair of the Studio City Neighborhood Council Ad Hoc meeting to review the Harvard Westlake River Park proposal. And we are now in session for our first of what I think will be many, not too many, meetings of this ad hoc group. I wanted to start with roll call following my agenda. So running through the agenda for roll call, Chip Meehan, I am here. Terry Austin. Terry is not here yet. We'll circle back. Alexander Black.
Here.
Thank you, sir, for coming in from so far away. Peter Cole.
Here.
Stephen Jones. I do not see Stephen. I have not heard from Stephen. Tony Knight is not here yet. Tony, you here? Michael Kapolsky.
Here.
Hello, sir.
Hello.
Joe Laskin is not here, but is excused. I will be playing the role of Joe Laskin later on during the subcommittees. Melanie Winter.
Here.
Hello, Melanie. And Scott Mandel.
Present.
Hello, sir. Terry Austin, I now see that you're here.
Here, yes, I'm here.
Hi there.
Hi, hello.
Okay, comments from the committee chair. I've given myself 10 minutes and I will not take that long. Someone's got an echo. So this ad hoc meeting is in existence as a result of a previous ad hoc meeting, which was created by the neighborhood council just prior to the end of the second quarter, right prior to the end of the public comment period when the original DEIR was submitted. We got late to the game, took a look at the information. I was also chair of that committee and decided at that point, with the resources and time we had, rather than rush to judgment one way or the other, it was important for the neighborhood council to delve further into a number of issues that some stakeholders had forwarded to the discussion. It's important to note that there are also a number of stakeholders who are in favor of the project as it now stands, and they are not as vocal in this process because they raise their hands and say yes. We took a look at the issues that were outstanding and recommended that there would not be a vote by the board up or down on the DEIR, but that there would be another ad hoc committee created that would reach out to the applicant, you guys, and David, Stacy, and Ari. Thank you very much for joining us. I know you guys are busy this time of year. And we thought that there were some topics that we could find solutions through conversation. There were some that would be a bit more difficult and require some experts. And there were some where we were frankly sort of at a loss. So this committee is set up to follow the notion of the June motion to set up another ad hoc committee. So here we are. Tonight, we are going to introduce the members of the subcommittees, each of which will be assigned to the 5 key areas of investigation. We're not going to have motions today. There will not be crazy in-depth conversations. And there probably won't even be any deep discussions, but there won't be decisions today. Those will come later after we have follow-up meetings to the concerns that will be placed before you and discussed a little bit today. After the subject expert meetings complete their investigation, we'll aggregate all of the feedback. That will be very public as to what's going on. You guys will know where we are. It'll be public. And then there will be some sort of recommendation to the board. It's important. There are some familiar faces. This project has been around for a long time, and the people that are passionate about it have been passionate for a long time. And you've heard their voices from various different platforms. It's important to be clear that this is a Studio City Neighborhood Council ad hoc committee. The Neighborhood Council represents all stakeholders in the community. Harvard Westlake is a stakeholder, and we are discussing a disagreement among stakeholders. There's not positions coming into this particular meeting. That said, our best efforts are to reach an agreement on the best use of the property, and we hope that we can get that done. The other note I have to myself in capital letters is we have a hard out at 9. Since we're not going to solve anything today, there's not a reason to turn this into a marathon, because we will have the opportunity to speak with each other moving forward. At this point, I'd like to have Ari, David, do you guys want to say something right now? Should I go ahead to the introduction of the committee members? Do you just want to follow that up
Why don't
last?
you do introduction? Let's let the committee introduce themselves, and then maybe we'll introduce ourselves at the end and just say a couple of words.
That's great. Terry with an A, you want to start first?
Have had to all my life
I
in
was
school.
thinking that.
Excuse me. My name is Terry Austin, and I've been a homeowner in Studio City for about 35 years. And I think it's full disclosure and important for anybody who doesn't know that I wrote the historical cultural monument nomination for the property. I have been involved with land use issues in my community for all the 35 years before this particular property came up. My interest is, as someone who lives here and intends to continue living here, to just make sure that whatever voice my community can have in finding the best development for our entire community, not just this project, but I'm interested in every development in our neighborhood, that a full disclosure on all levels be known. So my interest in being here, I'm not a professional architect or landscape person or anything like that. My background is nonprofit in television and film. So I come at this as a layperson, and just am interested in my community. So I don't know if there's anything else you think I should say, Chip, about me. I'm a swell dancer. I love
think
dogs.
that's awesome.
Anything else? No, I think that's it.
Okay.
I don't want to leave out anything. If anybody thinks there's something important that they think, oh, Terry, you should say this, so just chime in. But that is my interest in being on this ad hoc, is just getting a real clear idea of what the entirety of the scope of this project.
Thanks for your service. Alexander Black, alphabetically, and I won't be able to keep it up after A and B. So again, Alexander, thanks for calling from Colorado.
No problem. I'm right here. Yes, I'm local Studio City resident, member of the Studio City Sustainability Committee. Most of all interested in science, and anything I can do to provide us all with the best that we can get in terms of the real the solid work that we can do in areas that we have questions about, and working as best I can with not just environmental advocacy groups, but certainly folks who have been around, whether it's the EPA folks that I'm able to reach out to, and other groups that have been doing a good deep dive into areas that we are talking about in our sustainability committee. So I'm here to simply help find those answers and be a member of the community, so that I can provide all of our decision making with the best answers that we can get as we do question all of the items in front of us. I hope that makes sense.
It does. That was great. And we'll hear from you later on the artificial turf, where you've become quite the expert. Peter Cole with a C. I'm getting a roll with ABC. I'm liking this. Thank you. You ready?
You did that well.
Thank you.
As you said, Peter Cole is my name. I'm a homeowner here in Studio City for around 35 years. I live about 1,000 feet from the proposed project. And I followed the previous project that Harvard Westlake proposed in Coldwater Canyon rather closely. And my interest in this is obviously I live nearby and concerned about making sure this project peacefully coexists with the neighborhood. I do sound mixing for television for a living, and that's I would call that my area of expertise and can contribute in that area. That's it.
Thank you. Michael Kapolsky. Michael, you are still muted.
Yeah, saw
There
that.
you go.
I am a local resident, but new. Been here just about a year. Moved all the way from Encino. But we just sold our home and decided to spend the rest of our days in Studio City. Love the community. And I do walk by the proposed project probably 4 mornings a week on my morning walk. My background's kind of a pioneer in new technologies, and have some experience even on the statewide. I served on the California State Recycling Advisory Board, but that was back in the 90s. I started the first post-consumer recycling company, plastic recycling company in the country. Always looking at new technologies. And I've been particularly interested in the environmental area. And I just like solving problems. And usually I can see both sides when it's a problem really that involves doing what's right by the environment, but also looking at what's the best way to accomplish the task. And kind of wide open, more 2 ears, 1 mouth, and I'll use it proportionally. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Before we move forward, since we went through backgrounds, and I think everyone knows this, but just for the record, I am on the Sustainability Committee for SCNC. In addition to being a new board member on SCNC, I am on the board of LA River Public Arts Project, which is another nonprofit. I had previously been vice president at Save LA River Open Spaces from, I think, 2008 to 2019. And that has gone away. And now I'm on Studio City Beautification. So I've been bouncing around a bunch of these. So I've seen it from all the sides. Ari, I think the floor is yours. Patty and Patrice,
What?
you guys are not, oh, I'm sorry, Melanie, W. My God, you're so far back. Go for it.
Thanks. I'm Melanie Winter, resident of Studio City for 26 years, business owner in Studio City. My expertise is at the intersection of water, land use, and climate change. I've served on dozens of city, county, and state advisory boards on those topics over the last 2 decades. And I at this point, I think I'm sort of the OG on the Los Angeles River in terms of being around the longest and having the deepest subject matter expertise. The Toad Greenway Park over here between Laurel Canyon and Radford is mine, or a project we developed and designed with the Coastal Conservancy in the county. Yeah. Anything else? Oh, I'm on the Sustainability Committee. I helped form and write the original bylaws for the Neighborhood Council all those years ago. But I have never served on the board, just committees. Anything I'm missing?
That's most of it.
All right. Okay.
That is the end of the official committee members on the agenda. And we have a number of other neighborhood council board members here, and I thank you guys for being here as well. Ari, I think it's back to you now.
Sure. Thanks, Chip. I'll just take a minute to introduce myself and then let David and Stacy do the same. And I'll say just a couple of introductory words for Harvard Westlake. I've gotten to know most of you in this Zoom, some better than others, but and a few of you are new to me, but I'm Ari Engelberg. I'm Harvard Westlake's head of communications and strategic initiatives. And I am part of the team along with David Wheel and Stacy Marble, who are working on our River Park project. I'm an alum of the school. I've taught at the school. I've taught American history, American government, and a few electives. I coach basketball at the school, and I have a son who graduated and another one who's still enrolled. So since all the way back in 1983, when I joined the school as a 7th grader, 83, I've been pretty deeply invested in Harvard Westlake, and this is an exciting project for the school, and we think for the Studio City community. I know that it's a project that we've been talking about for some time, and there are a variety of opinions. Not everybody loves it. Some of the people who don't like this project are on this call, and that's okay. As we have said many times, we look forward to collaborating with the community to try to make this project as good as it can possibly be. We know we're never going to be able to solve every issue that people have, every concern, but we're genuinely interested in rolling up our sleeves and working to make this project as good as it can possibly be, not just for Harvard Westlake, but also for Studio City. And we can get into all of the things that we've done to try to achieve that already. As an indication of the fact that we really are looking forward to this being a productive working committee, you'll notice we don't have any public speakers here. It's just me, David, and Stacy. And our objective is really to listen and to roll up our sleeves and try to problem solve with this body, in the hope that this body eventually morphs into the neighborhood group that will work with the school as the project is being built and ultimately as the project is up and running and operates. So that's our little preamble. We look forward to diving in, and I'll turn it over to David and Stacy so they can introduce themselves.
I'll go ahead. Thank you, Ari. I think that was very well put and genuinely reflects the intent of the school and its desire to develop a project that is something that we all are able to enjoy. And this conversation, we hope, is a productive step towards that end. I have not been associated with Harvard Westlake quite as long as Ari. I date back in my initial years as a student from 1987. And I have been with the school for just about starting my 10th year, really, as the school's chief financial officer. I am the project manager for the River Park, and I am probably the closest in my connection to the technical and engineering and architectural teams that have put in the analysis that I am sure you all have looked over or contemplated, and that may form some of the basis for your questions, thoughts, comments that we can start to talk through tonight. Just as a general note, I want to be respectful, and I know Ari and Stacy join me in this. We want to be respectful of the process that the city uses to evaluate in great technical detail the environmental impacts or lack thereof of a project, and that's governed by CEQA. And it is our hope that we're able to pay deference to that project, particularly while responses to the draft EIR are still being evaluated by the city and answers formulated to those comments that were submitted. So there will be a point, I am sure, tonight at which we do not want to infringe on the CEQA process, and we'll need to defer to the city and the technical experts to go into some of the details. But short of that, as Ari mentioned, we're happy to be here tonight and talk about what is on this group's mind.
Thanks, David. Hi, everybody. I'm Stacy Marble. For those of you who don't know me, I'm the Director of Community and Public Affairs for Harvard Westlake School. I'm passionate about community service and making connections to our neighborhood, both for the school and for Studio City. I was born and raised in the neighborhood. I am a product of all public schools in Council District 2 live in Council District 4, and I'm happy to work with all of you, and I look forward to the discussion tonight.
Thanks very much, everybody. I'm going now to point 4. Are there public comment on non-agenda items within the committee jurisdiction? Every speaker will get 1 minute if they so desire. Are there any hands raised? I see no hands. 9 o'clock seems like it's doable, folks. It's a good thing. Are there any, and there's no government representatives for any kind of comments at this point? I do not see anybody other than people we've spoken to. So I think what we're going to do is go directly into a quick rundown of the topics, the questions that each of the subcommittees will go through. I think it might almost be informational at this point. There could potentially be some questions that come out of this, but I think what is probably going to happen in further investigation in this is that there will be outreach to first to Ari. No offense to David or Stacy, that has been the primary course of contact. Stacy, we know they go to you for all the answers. It's fine. And then what we'll do is there should be further conversations, either if called for, just a Zoom meeting. If it seems that it would be productive, there can be a trip to the site itself, if it's going to be productive. And I don't think what we want to do is have just a picnic. I think it has to be sort of a productive thing so we don't waste anyone's time. Peter, do you want to start off with the neighborhood issues? They will go from the construction all the way through operation, and just from an information standpoint, as much as anything else, Peter might be able to tell you, if you guys are not aware of some of the issues that have arisen recently through Sportsman's Landing. I know that there is not purview per the city of one project looking at the impact of another or the aggregate impact of multiple projects, but we are noticing difficulties with operation and construction simultaneously in that particular facility on a major artery, not exactly applicable, but enough of a warning that something that was, oh, this is an issue we'll figure out as we move forward, is actually looking to be a little more complicated and more urgent than we thought. It only takes one person parking a truck in the wrong place to stop traffic. So, Peter, is that enough of an opening for you?
Sure. I'm not one, as everyone knows, to take direction very well, so I'll try here. I think it was maybe last Saturday, around 10:45 at night, I was walking my daughter out to her car, and right before that, I started hearing some noise. And when I was outside, I was hearing some strange noise coming from the Sportsman's Landing project. And I decided to go over and investigate. And what I caught on camera was one of the stores under construction with a giant concrete saw cutting machine in one of the stores with the door wide open. As it is my way, I, of course, had a sound level with me, and I was about 30 feet away, and it was over 100 decibels. And this went on past 12:30 at night. I contacted twice. I tried to get a hold of LAPD. Second time I did. I don't believe they ever rolled to go deal. I was told that this is LAPD's jurisdiction. Also contacted Building and Safety, and they said that the rules for enforcement have changed since COVID, and basically there's no teeth in it. So they could go over and talk to the contractor, and basically a gentle slap on the wrist and say, please don't do that again. So there's no fine attached to that. So it's one thing to be made promises. This has been going on. This is not new. A couple days ago, I'm up 5:15 in the morning. I see construction workers over there, lights going on at the Equinox project. I'm doors slamming. So we've already had a conversation with the person overseeing the development that this shouldn't happen, but yet it continues to happen. Then the other issue over there is we've been having ongoing problems with their loading dock, which seems to either not be utilized properly, or it gets jammed up. It's not coordinated for a smooth operation, so it doesn't affect the traffic on Coldwater as well as Ventura Boulevard. This doesn't seem like a difficult problem to me for when I'm discussing with people that are planning, in this case, Sportsman's Landing project. It's a giant project coming up. In fact, in some ways, kind of dwarfs your project. And so I'm concerned that there's no teeth in enforcement, and these simple problems can just be addressed with, I'll try to be nice, lip service, and that puts the community at a disadvantage. Some general notes about sound, and this obviously Sportsman's Landing is approved, and whatever happened over there, whatever promises were made, those noises can be mitigated to a level of insignificance. I beg to differ. I am one of the closest houses to the project, and I'm hit with noises that may not trigger a sound level meter, but make me feel like I'm now, instead of living in a residential neighborhood, I'm living on Ventura Boulevard. So at all hours of the night, I'm hearing occasional car alarms, car door slamming, construction noise, voices, you name it. And these are disturbing. I have an older house. It may not be perfectly soundproof, but I don't think I should have to bear the brunt of that expense, since I was kind of here first in some ways. But anyway, so as far as your project goes, obviously there's some issues with, I see loudspeakers are going to be placed on the site. I see a press box that's going to hold 40 people. I see stadium seating for 2,000 people. I question how that can be mitigated. So this is something we can continue to dialogue about. I have some suggestions on how to mitigate some of those issues. They may not be what you want to hear, but it is a solution. Your people will still be able to hear, and we can discuss it later. Also, slightly off the topic of sound, looking at back to Sportsman's project, is I finally got an answer as to where the trucks end up for all the massive amount of excavation. And I'm told Azusa is their destination point. So I'm curious, is that to where your project will end up doing round trips from? And so that's 30 miles away. And we got a lot of truck trips. It's a lot of pollution. So I'd kind of like to know, as on an environmental standpoint, how that's going to work out. So I think that's basically it. Thank you.
So I guess the questions would be, in addition to, well, there's a couple of questions. During construction, will there be nighttime construction, which I believe is forced in a retail environment? The other question is, what will during construction, what will the routes for the excavation be? Are we going to be bumping into each other? And then the other question is, I think it's that's more put off into another conversation, is, potential mitigation and operational issues. So David, you're nodding. Do you mind taking some of those?
Yeah, I'm happy to talk about them. Peter, thank you for laying out some of those considerations. I have thoughts, as I don't know, Ari and Stacey do, about Sportsman's and how we might be different as people who live daily. We may not all sleep at our desks on most nights, but we all live daily in Studio City, and I think like to consider ourselves to be very responsive to concerns when it comes to our campus operations. So I'd hate to think that we're ever in a similar position to what you're experiencing with Sportsman's and car alarms and doors and voices and concrete saws when there shouldn't be concrete saws. To some of your specific questions, you mentioned the haul route and haul locations. Azusa is not one of the sites that our project would use. The two that I believe the engineers are considering are Hanson Rock Quarry and United Rock Products. Both are approximately in that 30 miles from the site. I think they're a little bit under that, but 30 miles more or less. And the distance traveled, the emissions, greenhouse gas emissions and fuel and diesel consumption, my understanding is all of that is analyzed within the underlying GHG models that are contained in the draft EIR. There are some pretty stringent requirements about the model year of haul trucks that we're able to use, the preference being for the more recent ones when the fuel and emission standards are much more strict than they used to be. And that is meant to try to address, Peter, what you're getting at with regards to the number of trucks and their movement. So that is part of it. I think those were your specific questions around hauling the destination. The route itself would lead vehicles southbound on Whitsett Avenue and make a right turn into the project site where they would be loaded, and then exit from also an adjacent driveway, make a right onto Whitsett, right onto Ventura Boulevard, and right onto Coldwater Canyon Avenue, where they would then resume their path along the freeway towards one of those two aforementioned sites.
May I ask a follow-up question?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
So with these haul routes, are they, once you get on the freeway, you stay on the freeway to the destination, or does it have to hit you have to get off the Ventura Freeway to go to the 170, or I don't know where these places are, but.
That I don't know off the top of my head. They're both in Irwindale. So as I'm picturing the freeway layout, I believe that is just a straight shot 101, 134 to the 210 and the appropriate exit off of Irwindale.
Okay. And then as far as the construction noise, I guess I'd have to review where the sensitive receptors are located. And so even during the day, I'm also concerned that the noise levels don't get past the point of no return. Also, I know it's not your issue, but it's our issue, and we live here. If your project starts close to when Sportsman's starts, in aggregate, we will be drowning in noise, trucks, and dirt and pollution. So there must be a way for the community for these two large projects to coordinate in some way for the benefit of us all. Thanks.
Yeah, Peter, all I can offer is that given that we first purchased the property in December of 2017 and began our dialogue with the community looking at basic site plans about a year later, I'm hopeful that the Sportsman's process will be just as lengthy and tedious as what we've had to go through, so that they're starting somewhere around 2026 or 2027.
I've heard
if it's any pacing.
Actually, David, what they were hoping for was mid next year.
That'll be tough unless they're going with what is sometimes referred to as a mitigated negative declaration, a neg deck, which would mean they would have to declare that there are essentially no significant and unavoidable impacts as a result of their construction, and that they can by right implement this project without any special approvals. I don't know if that's the case, but that's an MND would be required to proceed at that kind of pace. But I can pass that along, Peter. Thank you. I'll pass that along and see if I can learn more about the timing of what they're proposing to do.
Great, thanks.
If that's the end there, what I will do is throw open to public comment, 1 minute per participant discussing the neighborhood issues during construction and operation, including noise, light, traffic, general scale of the project, and the other. Goat Puppet, I see you are here with your hand up. You have a minute, sir. Do I have to unmute or in this format?
I think you have to ask him to unmute. There's a little,
Yeah. There you go.
What is the problem?
What is your problem?
It's time to unmute. Please. This is starter. All right, I'm trying to turn on this device, this electric device. Yes, I am here. As you can see, I am praying to God that the FBI please indict all these criminal fucking developers. Yes. Yes, they look at this. They're going to be taking trucks from beautiful Studio City to this horrendous shithole Azusa. Many of you have never been to Azusa. Raise your hope if you've been to Azusa. Yes, all these trucks taking your dirt and dirtying up the dirty community of Azusa. Is it really worth it, the developers?
Yeah, they think so.
Yes, but there's three things you need for proper city development. You must pay off the building inspector, donate to the office holder account, and pay off the city council person. And you can build anything. And later Goat Puppet will come here. He's trying to build a hotel in the middle of the 101.
That's your time, sir. Thank you very much.
God, I think he's going to. I hope not.
Patrice, you're up.
Hi, everybody. I was just wondering if you guys would consider putting up story polls to give the community a much better, well, a better idea of exactly what you guys have in mind. Thank you.
Harvard Westlake, do you guys want to take that?
My understanding is that story polls are something that the planning department would request. I have not engaged with them as to why they have not determined that story polls would be would be necessary for this project. Why they would not be necessary, I should say. So I don't have further information on
Well, I think
the logic.
you could probably volunteer that yourselves without the city asking for it, just to do that for the community.
Yeah, we could. As I think about the comparisons, all of the built structures are conforming to the agricultural zoning, 30 feet or less. There are light poles that exceed that. But as we consider the comparison, there are poles on the golf driving range that exceed the height of the light poles with a similar sort of characteristic. So
I'm talking the entire project, just not a light pole. I'm just the overall project and the buildings and how big it is, how tall it's going to be, etc.
I think at this stage we can consider it. I don't, Patrice, I want to be candid with you. I don't know how likely that is because it would, I think it would at least at minimum require shutting down golf and tennis operations for a period of time. And as I was mentioning, I'm not sure there will be a lot to indicate from that, given the height conformance that we're proposing.
Could we take that under advisement for further communication? Because if there was something like just wrapping neon duct tape on one of the existing poles, if it's something that actually works in your favor, in terms of public sentiment, maybe it's something that you would find of value to.
Yeah, I'm happy
pursue.
to continue to think about that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Patrice. Peter, you are up, sir.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a comment on Patrice's comment. I hear your point on story polls. I don't necessarily agree, but another thing to do is what I did with Sportsman, since I could not get the information I needed from the developer, is I hired an architect to do a 3D rendering, and that works in Google Earth, so everybody can fly around the project and view from a different vantage point. Is that something that you could do and provide to the public?
Let me ask about that one, Peter. I'll have to run that by our architectural team to see what they have at this stage with site plans and renderings. I don't know the answer to that, but I can inquire.
Sounds like an AP science class project, David.
Yeah.
Any other comments on the first subject? No hands. We're going to move on to Melanie, who will handle all issues water, which range from stormwater capture to the pumping to flood risks and other issues that are there. There's some meat to this. So Melanie, you have the floor.
Oh, joy. Yeah, this is a complex topic. And I know we've been discussing this project for a long time, and I haven't had the opportunity to do a site walk with any of you, but I also have not had most of my questions answered with any clarity. Two of the things that I'm still wrestling with are the offsite stormwater capture project, the remnant from 15 years ago, when to get state funding, this was what people were doing. And now that that's not the case, I still don't understand why you're doing it. I don't see the value. I don't see how it pencils out. I don't see how it's a benefit to the homeowners in the neighborhood. I don't see how it works out in your water balance on the site. These systems are carbon intensive to build. They require consistent maintenance to build. You're doing something that nature can do quite easily. So I'm still trying to figure out what value you see in that. And I really want a very detailed walkthrough with you on this particular project element. Second, I have been struck by the differences in your submittal on the geological side as compared to the new development at Sportsman's. Theirs acknowledges that groundwater has been monitored, measured at as close as 10 feet just across the street from your project, when your project pretty much is saying groundwater not a problem, we can go down with our parking, no big deal, we won't need to pump, it's not a problem. But I expect that that groundwater will rise, that you're going to have to do dewatering at the site, and that is something that should be indicated in your project analysis. So that's a super high level here because what you've proposed is a very engineered approach to managing all the water resources on site. You've got stormwater, water supply, and groundwater dewatering, and your irrigation. So I would anticipate that you've analyzed this in a very detailed way. But what the community has been presented is very high level. Isn't this fancy? All good, super techno. We great. I don't accept that, given my experience with all of these kinds of projects. And I would very much appreciate a much deeper dive into this, because I'm super skeptical. Am I missing anything? I mean, that's trying to keep it brief. Chip, am I forgetting something?
I think the other issue, and this will overlap a bit with Alex and the artificial turf, is that we're flipping the balance on the site from making it up because 80-20 works so frequently. Right now it's 20%.
Oh, thank you. Now, okay, I remember. I think I
Hardscape.
forgot. Yeah. So
Okay.
that's water and land use both. So the other two things are you're building in a floodplain. It's almost immoral, and this is not just you, it's also sportsmen. It's almost immoral for anybody to be building in a floodplain these days. We know that the system as it's built right now is throwing our local water resources away. We know that the storms that are going to be hitting us, those systems are not going to hold. So any existing open space in a floodplain should stay open space right now. That's how it best serves the community, to mitigate storm events, to sequester carbon, to buffer from climate impacts. That's how floodplain land best serves Studio City. So we've set that aside for sports. And the hardscape issue is something that's a piece of this, not just in a floodplain, but pretty much everywhere. The analysis that the city and county have done say that we need to reduce impervious hardscape in Los Angeles by 30% in the next decade if we're going to be able to manage our water resources appropriately and deal with climate change. Reduce impervious surfaces. And on this site, you're proposing to increase the level of impervious surfaces. So there we go. I think now I've got all my hits.
I think
so. Yeah, those are questions I have. In wanting to look at Studio City, there are two ways of looking at a project. Some stakeholders want high end. So whatever is considered super fancy in Beverly Hills, we want that in Studio City. From my perspective, high end means truly sustainable and not so much sustaining what we have today, because what we have today is not livable. We're frying, we're dying, things are escalating here. We have to go in the other direction and mitigate the impacts of the suffering that is going to continue to increase here. So I want to see projects. For me, high end is something that sequesters carbon, that cools our community, that adds value on all those important things, not that increases impervious surface, that builds in a floodplain, that pumps up groundwater, that eliminates existing, things that are sequestering carbon right now, and all that kind of stuff. So I'm looking for a good, scientifically sound analysis of the impacts this project has, especially when you are in floodplain land. Existing, historic, always open, undeveloped floodplain land. Now I'm done.
Do anyone from Harvard Westlake want to respond to that? I think one of the questions is can we take a tour and see what some of that, but then the other issues really are talking about hydrology. I don't know how you feel about that.
I can speak a little bit to the geotechnical analysis and hydrological analysis that's contained, to my read, in extensive detail of the draft EIR and the appendices it contains. And I think from our standpoint, significant deference needs to be paid to the engineers who put that together. My understanding of their findings is not, Melanie, as you've characterized, that there is not a permanent dewatering or pumping solution necessary. That the groundwater levels in this area, based on borings taken over many years on this site for our project as proposed, as well as projects prior to that, that the groundwater level is such that we are not likely to encounter it. And so the recommendations made in the geotechnical report, which was approved by the Department of Building and Safety, was a basic waterproofing mechanism. And that was it, along with a mat foundation. There are recommendations around liquefaction. Liquefaction being defined as the ability for soils to become liquefied in the event of the application of water in an earthquake at depths of 50 feet or higher. And so there are recommendations, as the geotechnical engineers believe there are strata of potentially liquefiable soils closer to the surface, that they're simply excavated and recompacted with clean fill in order to address that condition. So there's nothing that I read and that our engineers communicated to the school, and I think included in the draft EIR, that would indicate an ongoing issue with regards to groundwater. So I think the EIR just differs in its conclusion from, Melanie, what your point of view is.
Right, mine's not a point of view, just to be super clear. I don't have a PE after my name, and I am a woman. I do know what liquefaction is, and mine's not a point of view as opposed to the engineer analysis. I also have looked at the groundwater levels here in this site and the records of the state. So has your developed neighbor across the street. I recommend that you look at their EIR and ask yourself why the significant difference from a property across the street from each other, rather than condescend to me. Also, I do also want to just bring up, the city has a massive program to recharge the groundwater basin. So as in speaking with other developers who are building underground parking garages, who have done them in other places in the valley, when they encounter reported groundwater depths at 15, 20 feet, we have a rain year, they're in the middle of construction, suddenly now they have to adjust their development because they're going to have to be pumping when we have good rain years. That's in a dry condition when we get a rain year. As the city begins to recharge the groundwater basin, that groundwater level is absolutely going up. That you're not accounting for that, or that you're just trusting your PE on this, is concerning. Thanks.
At this point, without any further comment from the committee, I'll throw it open for public comment on water issues, 1 minute each. Hand raised by Goat Puppet. Please unmute, sir.
Yes, I was fully paying off a building inspector on my property. Inflation, can't understand that. Now, as you know, you guys are complaining about nothing. The developer owns the police, the DA, judges, yes, the judges, the attorney general, governor, the mayor. Doesn't matter who wins in December. Yes, they'll all be little prostitutes. And I know what you're thinking. You think that Rick Caruso can save you. No, he's already lost. Yes. So say hello to Mayor Bass. Hi, Mayor Bass. How are you doing? Hi. Yeah. So as you see, you can complain about the conditions in your virtual prison, or you can do something to escape the virtual prison, such as what I did.
Sorry, any further comments, or should we move to the?
Yes, I got disconnected. Yes. I'm upside down. What happened?
Thank you so much.
I had my hand raised, Chip.
I didn't see your hand, Adele. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you.
It's Brandon's fault. Stop it, Brandon.
One thing that they didn't talk about was how carbon intensive the stormwater capture project is, because they have to put in, they have to excavate quite significant amount of dirt to put in concrete into the ground there. And that just seems a complete and utter shame, since that, for better or for worse, the golf course has been collecting water and dumping it into the aquifer. I just wanted to speak a little bit about what Melanie was talking about, is that I'm just going to read something. Leading conservation scientists and international biodiversity organizations say that in order to avert this dual catastrophe and preserve clean water, clean air, and a stable climate, we need to protect 50% of the planet by 2050. To meet that goal, we need to protect 30% of our remaining undeveloped natural areas by 2030. 30 in 30 initiative. California has only 8 years to protect 6 million acres of land. And I actually propose that these 16 acres should be part of our 30 in 30. And they're right in the middle of Studio City, right in the middle of the flats. And it's a place that we need to protect the open space, the green open space, and not layer the land with plastic and, and put concrete in there. Right now, as you all know, there's one building, what is the house, the little guest house is about what, 4,000 square feet or something. And then there's a tiny little house. And there's no other buildings. There's what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 bathrooms on the property right now. It is an undeveloped resource in our community. And I think that is the proposed sports complex is not that, and it will take away an environmental gem. So that's my comment.
Thanks. I think we're done with public comment on water. We're going to move to Alex. You okay hanging on if I do it? Okay.
Yeah.
Can you wait so I can
Yeah.
stay with the order of the agenda? Just want to double check. Thank you. Terry, would you mind starting the conversation about public access?
Yeah, we've starting with the NOP, David, when you did that presentation in September of 2020, there was mention in your presentation verbally about vendors renting the property. And in the DEIR, there isn't a whole lot of clarification on that. And that's one of the issues that I'd like if you could give us any proposed deals with ESPN or any professional entities or any other vendors other than the school using the property. Because if I could, Chip, can I share my screen for a second? Can I show, this is the public access that is in your, hang on a second, let me get this up. This is we've got that's in your submittal to the city. And let me see, can I do that, Chip? Can I share the screen? No, can I?
I believe I've enabled multiple screens to share simultaneously.
See if I can do that down. You okay? You know what? Okay, I'm not gonna waste everybody's time. Just so, just so everybody knows who's listening, there hasn't been any pre-meeting to this. This is it. We're getting together so it can be very, very transparent. Nobody's planned anything in advance. So at a further meeting, I'll send that to you. So my question is about public access. One of the community concerns is that this property has been open to the public, although privately owned. It has been open without dues or any sort of covenants or any sort of restrictions since 1955. And the proposal to the school that's been offered to the public is that there was, initially it was a 5.4 acre park. Now it's touted as a 7.1 acre park. And I know that the community visualizes continuous acreage, like some sort of people's idea of a park, no matter which way it's shaped.
I believe Terry has frozen in mid-passion.
But it's something that you have, and it is some sort. Sorry. Tell me when I'm back. Can you hear me now?
Your video's not
Am I
back,
back?
but your
I can
audio is
hear all-
back.
Put her back. Okay.
Hey, Terry, if you turn your video off, it might stabilize for you.
Okay, that's a good idea. All right, fine. So anyway, the thing about the public access, David and Ari and Stacy, is that in the literature that's been put out, there's been a offer of, oh, there's so many more sports. There's only 2 sports there now, and there's going to be so many more sports, and there's going to be this park. And so it sounds like this is something that's a daily offering to the public. And in fact, when I read both the NOP and the DEIR, the public use is in my personal opinion, quite restricted. It actually uses the phrase for the athletic facilities to that it's open when not in use by the school to Studio City-based nonprofit organizations. That's on page 31 of the original NOP. So I would like to hear a clarification of if because Studio City nonprofit organizations means that you could fulfill public access just with your regular intramural with other schools, which are also nonprofits. And by having the 2 nonprofit organizations that you mentioned, actually one that is in Burbank and one is in West LA, but you know, that could fulfill your public access. So I just wanted some clarification about what is actually open to me. If I get up, I'm a senior citizen, and I get up on a morning and my sciatica isn't acting up, and I say, hey, this is a day that I can physically do some exercise. I think I'd like to walk over. I want to know what is open to me without a reservation or belonging to a team, because the pool is described as being open to team members of swim teams. So, so that's why that's confusing to me. And so, like I said, the reason I want to be part of this is I'm still confused. I think there could be more transparency for the community about what is actually being offered in terms of public access to the average Joe, not somebody who has to sign up to a team and buy a uniform and attend practices and then go to other venues for other things. Just somebody who could use this property the way it's been used for half a century, as somewhere that you could get up in the morning and just go over and enjoy with other community members. So I'd like more clarification on what the average person who's not a team member of any kind or belongs to an organization, what is that? And then the other thing is that in I think when we talk about renderings, David, that, renderings, a dictionary definition is an idealized artistic drawing of something yet to be. So, or that's one definition. They're not photographs, so renderings can be a little misleading. And I think that the public, in terms of a park-like setting, the 12-foot barriers on the west and north side, which are an 8-foot concrete wall plus a 4-foot fence, but they are visual barriers that total 12 feet. I don't think that is explained adequately to the public, so they have an idea of what park-like setting is being offered. I don't think the public knows that the 1/4 acre of tennis courts are included as acreage of the park. So that's what I would like, is just how you could, like when I met with Ari, and Ari has taken the time to meet with me on other occasions, and this is something that, is always said about, we want to enhance your community. And that's the part that I can't picture, is the actual park and public access, like for the regular person. So that's one of the things that I want to explore, and we'd be really happy to hear what that is. And then also the park-like setting. I'd like that really clarified so the average person understands there's not a 5 or 6 acre chunk of land that is a park-like setting. It is in fact the perimeter of the building, the tennis courts, and the 1.1 acre going into the Zev Greenway. And I think that gets a little clouded in the presentation. So the public access, what is the actual public access? And if you know at this point, do you already have some contracts, whether they're Olympic related or professional sports related, I know that 2028 is the first year that lacrosse is an Olympic sport. And so I'm just wondering if there's any contracts that you're already engaged in that we'd like to know what's going to be going on in our neighborhood, and how that cuts into the public access. So those are some of the things. It's the actual being able to visualize and the pragmatic use of the average person in this neighborhood, how they're going to be able to use that property. And I think that is in a nutshell. I know that as these meetings go on, that things will expand, because as I said, I did do the historical nomination as well. And there's a whole part that we're not addressing tonight about that aspect of it. But as far as public access goes, I know from being at farmers market, from walking in my neighborhood, from being involved with land use, I know that people are really muddy about what can they actually do. So that's where I'll start off.
That's a good start to let folks choose. So basically, could you clarify what you're thinking of as park? Could you give us some insight into where you sit right now with the Zev Greenway? Because I know there were some conversations with the county that have been going back and forth. I don't know if those have been done. Could you talk to us about associated groups that you're bringing in to use the facility? I know there was a youth group with disadvantaged youth where you had a pretty good press release a while ago. Is there more of that? And then could you give us, obviously it's not built yet, what do you envision as public access? So those 4 points, is that fair?
Yeah. Do you want us to give a high level answer now, and then obviously the subcommittee would dive into that topic?
Yeah, I mean, I think really, Ari, what we want to know is when are the Olympics coming and how many events are you going to have?
All of them. We're hosting the entire Olympics at the time. I chuckled when you spoke, Terry, because we have had this exact conversation. I don't remember how many times Harvard Westlake is not hosting Olympic events at the River Park, has never been approached by the Olympic Committee, and wouldn't entertain hosting Olympic events at this site. Beyond which the site doesn't, as grand as it might seem, doesn't even come close to meeting the criteria for hosting an Olympics. I'll also say categorically, we have no relationships with professional sports teams. We don't anticipate having any relationships with professional sports teams. Furthermore, as is consistent with both of our existing campuses, we do not rent our properties to any third parties. Our campuses are off limits to third parties, with the exception of community-based nonprofit groups that serve primarily communities of need, to whom we are willing to grant access to our facilities at no charge. And that is the spirit in which we are pursuing partnerships at the River Park. And it is our anticipation that we will identify, we've already identified and have named publicly some of the community groups with whom we expect to partner on access to the site. And there will be others, and they will all be in the spirit of serving communities of need, primarily children, but also adults who are disadvantaged, who are handicapped, and who would benefit enormously from access to a site like this and the amenities that are being built there. That is the extent of what we would consider third-party community work. Third-party access. We do not allow commercial filming on our campuses, never have. I think the last movie that was shot at Harvard School was 1984 or something like that. But for years and years, there's been no commercial film production on our campuses, even though we are asked on an almost daily basis about it. So I don't know how many times we can say those things, but we'll continue to say them. I'll say a little bit about general individual public access, and then I'd like to turn it over to David for additional. I chuckle at this too, because this is actually a point of, I would say, significant frustration for us at Harvard Westlake. We have been, since the moment we bought the property and began having conversations with community groups, public meetings at the Six, individual conversations with folks like you, Terry, and there have been a lot of them. We have said that we would very much like for the community, both individuals and local community groups, to be able to use this facility when it's not in use by Harvard Westlake. And a lot of the time, it will not be in use by Harvard Westlake. We have asked the Studio City Residents Association, we have asked the Neighborhood Council previously, we have asked other groups and other stakeholders to please engage with us on a thoughtful process about the appropriate level of community access that would be most beneficial to Studio City neighbors. On the one hand, I know that people want access. On the other hand, the immediate neighbors to the property have a right to the quiet enjoyment of their homes. And so we want to strike the right balance. The community up until now has not been motivated to engage in that conversation. Hopefully this subcommittee of this ad hoc committee will be an effort, will result in an effort to better define those terms of use, hours of use, conditions of use. But we continue to believe that this facility, various amenities of it should be open for community use when not in use by the school. I'll let David dive in because I'm sure he has additional thoughts.
No, Ari, I think you covered it quite well. Terry, I see you pulled up a page from the initial study. That has been superseded by information contained in the draft EIR. And so I'd point you to page 2-34, table 2-3 specifically in the project description, where the updated version is contained and does not include references to specifically Studio City based organizations. It just refers to pre-approved organizations, or in the case of the swimming pool, a pre-approved swim program. So just to want to make sure that's clear.
David, but that's an organization. What my question was about individuals who are not part of an organization.
Yeah, and I think that's why I think Ari described it well from our perspective. I haven't been in all the conversations that Ari and Stacy have engaged in, but the conversations that I've had with some on this subject have not yielded much for us to work off of in terms of finding what the right mix is between the two tensions that Ari described. The school's genuine desire to have public access, but also some in the community who don't want that because of the potential for traffic or noise, or folks from outside the neighborhood being invited in to use the site. And so it's a missing element in the dialogue that I think is regrettable. We really would like to understand what can be put in place that would allow the right level of individual use. And absent that sort of input, you can see where our analyses have defaulted. And that is to some of the partners that Ari mentioned and others that we're more than happy to continue to discuss. But individual use has not been one where we feel like we've had a lot to go on. I'm sorry to say.
David, I think that's exactly why we are formulating this committee. Let's have that conversation to figure out what's there. Terry,
Yeah.
would you mind pulling this down by not sharing any longer?
Yep.
Thanks. I was just told my internet was unstable. I'm back. There's a number of hands raised. I'd like to go with those. Stacy, we're not denying you a soapbox, are we? Okay. Goat Puppet, you're first. Hello, Goat Puppet.
Yes. Yes, as you can see, you're just going to get table scraps. I mean, it's not even going to be Olympic approved. I mean, what kind of shithole is that? 2028? I mean, the Rams are going to go over to Woodland Hills and they're going to build a practice facility, state of the art. So let's let the Rams build their overdevelopment, and let's give this Weddington golf course thing and keep the little golf balls flowing there. That's right there. If you can't prove it and build it to Olympic standards, It shouldn't be built at all. I was counting on that. And you let me down as a goat puppet developer. But if you want, I can redesign it. And I can put it in the middle of the 101 freeway and make it a lot larger, like my future hotel.
Okay.
Yes, remember everybody, these people build crap and give you crap as excuses.
Thanks so much.
Thank God this council's as dumb as they are.
Peter, you're up.
Yeah, I'm curious about the definition of public here. I think the demographic at this site that I would call public versus the other site up on Coldwater, they are probably substantially different. For instance, 25 feet, and that might be, actually it's probably less than that, 25 feet from one end of the property, often there is a unhoused gentleman who makes the bench down there his home. And when he's not there, he is down the other end by me. And obviously the city's fine with unhoused making the river their home. And if this is, the definition of public access. So for instance, this particular gentleman who's currently incarcerated for, I think, maybe the third time for assault with a deadly weapon, if he decides he wants to visit the river park without assaulting anybody, but everybody knows his name, and perhaps he's a little, everyone knows his name and his image, and it may frighten a few people off. Would you be adverse to him visiting the public section of your park? Thank you.
I guess that's broadly. What are you guys going to do about this?
Yeah, Ari, do you want to talk about Jonathan?
Well, yeah, I mean, our belief is that it's obviously, as we know, the ultimate resolution of control of the Zev Yaroslavsky Greenway remains to be determined. I know that that's a question, Chip, that you want us to lean into. It has been our expressed hope to be able to take over maintenance of the Greenway so that there's one contiguous experience for visitors to move back and forth between the publicly available portions of our river park and the Greenway itself. Whether or not Harbor Westlake would be given charge of security along that Greenway is yet another jurisdictional question. There is no question that Harbor Westlake will maintain a 24/7, 365 security team at the River Park campus, and the portions of the River Park that are our property, which say the River Park, will be secured by that security team. And anybody who represents a threat to the safety or wellness of not only the school community, but any of our visitors and guests will not be permitted on the site. And we have obviously the authority to enforce that because it's our property. As to whether Jonathan or others will be allowed to remain along the Greenway just beneath our property is an open question.
Ari, there's a little sleight of hand there. I'm asking about, will you mentioned one individual, there's actually a few. Will they all be allowed to visit what I call the setback, what you call the public area? Will he be allowed to freely visit that area?
I mean, I think we need to define standards of conduct that we will post publicly and make available for people to read, and they'll be on the website, and it'll be the expectation that we set that while members of the public, members of the community will be free to enjoy aspects of the river park, that there shouldn't be excess loitering, that people are not allowed to live in those public sections, that if people are obviously under the influence of a substance or are expressing violent tendencies toward other guests, then they will be immediately removed. I'm spitballing. We need to develop that language, but
Okay.
Clearly we have an interest in protecting not only our students and our employees, but the guests to the publicly available portions of the property. And we will obviously post conditions of use that allow us to remove people who represent a threat.
So lastly on that, perhaps somebody who represents the homeless community should be brought into this conversation. So for the next meeting. Thank you.
That's a good insight, Peter. Thank you. Heidi, you are next.
Hey, hi. Back to the story polls. Yes, that does seem like it might possibly be really hard to do the whole property. But how about this? Maybe do the story poll, since there's quite a bit of confusion about the publicly available areas. Why don't you consider doing the story polls for the publicly available access area that you speak of, like the park? People are a little confused about, is it, a full whole park like Terry was saying earlier? But the 5.4 acres that you speak of, maybe you could do the story polls just for that area so that the community can better understand what it is that they're being offered as a, it sounds like a continual access.
And it may not be story polls, it may be just marking lines down on the grass so that we'll talk about that. That's a good insight. That's a good thought, Heidi.
There is on the website a site plan that some may say it's a crude rendering, but it was an initial attempt at demonstrating the areas of the site that we imagined would be open for substantial public access throughout the day, and those that would be primarily for school use when the school is using them, and then for use by authorized groups or individuals. You can find that on the website. Obviously, there are a lot of questions that one could ask about that, and I think it's very fair that this committee lean into this topic so that we have a clear understanding of, as we said, who gets to use it, when, how often, what is considered overuse or too much use on the part of immediate neighbors, what's the appropriate level of use, and then I think Peter's comment about how do we manage the safety of the property and is a valid one that we need to discuss as well.
Well, and that's clearly something where you're going to need to have collaboration with the neighborhood committee you're talking about, so it's not Harvard Westlake dictating the fate. Patrice.
Hi there. So a couple questions, and I've always wondered about this. Have you consulted with your insurance company about having strangers onto the property? And secondly, have you consulted with the parents? I can't imagine with your students paying, their parents paying all this money for this education, that they're fine with sharing their pool with strangers from the outside. I'm just curious if after this is all said and done and you say that you're going to share the pool and all these, the fields and everything else, that you're not going to come back to us afterwards and go, sorry, insurance company won't cover you and you can't come in. What assurances are we going to have that that the parents nor the insurance company are going to nix this? Thank you.
I can let David speak to the insurance question. What I can tell you is that the core athletic amenities, things like the pool, it is contemplated that there will be some form of public access when they are not in use by the school. So we do not anticipate, for example, at least in our imagination, we have not anticipated our own swim team practicing in half of the pool and a public swim program running on the other half of the pool at the same time. Rather, our swim team practices only during a certain limited number of hours over the course of the day. You all went to high school and you know that sports typically happens after school between roughly the hours of 3 and 6 or 7. And that it would be at other times of day that, for example, a public swim program would be operating, or that a community group might reserve space on the field.
That's not what I'm asking. I'm asking whether they're all at the same time or at separate times. I'm asking, germ-wise and with COVID and everything else, how the parents would feel about their kids sharing the pool with strangers. That's one consideration. And like I said, it's insurance company. You're not answering my question. Have you guys checked with your insurance company to see if you can have the public on this facility?
Yes, we have, and there are no concerns.
Okay, well, that's good. Okay.
I can also let you know, Patrice, that I understand your question. there is, it is in the spirit of our school's mission that we find ways of allowing the community and community groups to benefit from the presence of the school. We do that now at the upper school campus. We allow Special Olympics to come use the site. We host events for Make-A-Wish. We host a picnic for LAPD. And there are a number of other things. And it is entirely consistent with the message that we deliver to our families from the time that they apply to the school, that teaching their children by example, that being involved in the community and rolling up your sleeves and working with community groups is an important part of Harvard Westlake education. And so it's entirely, I should note there may be some of the people on this call, in fact, who use our track every morning for jogging. That's something that's been open to members of the Studio City community.
Ari, I could also add that we, the three of us, our head of school, our board of trustees, messaging to our own internal school community have been very consistent all along on this principle as it relates to the river park, that public access is a feature of what we are intending for the site. And that is a message that we started delivering as the plans were first being developed. And it's a message that we continue to deliver even now with new employees, new families who join our community. So it is something that we talk about quite openly. That there have been, like any community, it's not fully homogenous, but we do believe that our overall community, student body and parent body, support the school in this effort.
There's a lot of work to be done here. I think the subcommittee needs to get sort of a handle on what it is that Harvard Westlake is doing. I'm not a member of the community, so I would like to see the calendar, and I think that would be helpful if that was more broadly distributed, so people in the community generally who are concerned see the level of outreach and use of the facilities you guys currently do, and then maybe we'll put a straw man calendar together to figure this out. But I would like to leave the public access. I'd like to go back to finish up the people whose hands are raised and then get to the next one, since Alexander is here in Central or Mountain Time. If that's okay with everybody, I go to Melanie.
Yeah, I'm just going to circle back and say, I think if, Peter can share with you what technology his folks used to create sort of a VR virtual reality experience of the site, I really highly recommend that you do that and make it very clear which areas of the site are for public access and which areas of the site are potentially for public access when cleared by Harvard Westlake, because those are two very different things. I mean, it's sort of like there's a part of it that's actually public and a part of it that's sort of like the Grove, I guess. We have a private police force, certain areas are for the public, certain areas are for our people. But I think if you certainly have the technology and the means to create something that makes it easy for people to see how you're separating the public, the restricted from the unrestricted areas of the site through fencing, through whatever. So the experience of walking through the site as someone who is a member of the public, but not an pre-approved and security cleared, member of a group that your students are here to help. So yeah, I just want to, I think folks would really benefit from being able to have a clearer understanding of that. So we understand what public is and what access is and what that experience would be like. And also clear definitions of what those different levels of access will be. Thanks.
Lori, you're up. Lori Cohn?
Yes, here I am. Thank you. I know a lot of us have had this question, which has been touched on, but I'm still not clear on it. I know you have the walking path around the development, and we want to know how many acres are you attaching to that as your X number of acres of open space open to the public? Because isn't that a required city setback to have at least 5 feet from the curb all the way around, if not more on a commercial property? I don't know.
I mean, I can let David speak to the public portions of the river park that are much more extensive. The walking trail is not a 5-foot width. It is there in some cases, and correct me if I'm wrong, David, 50 to 100 feet of depth before you get to any features of the facility. It's going to be heavily landscaped. It's going to be a meandering trail. It's going to incorporate as many of the existing trees as it can, with additional new trees added. It will, of course, be appropriately lit at night with both decorative and then safety lighting, so that it can be enjoyed by anybody who wants to walk around it safely. Patrolled by our security so that, again, there's safety for those who use it. But it is intended to be much, much more than just 5 feet in width. It's many times that.
Okay.
As far as the portions
Go
of it,
ahead. Sorry.
go ahead, Larry.
No, okay, I understand it's more than 5 feet, but do you have a figure of how many acres does that walking path total that we can apply to the 5 or 6 or 7 number of acres of public access open space you refer to periodically?
I think, Lori, I've taken down, as I know Ari and Stacy are both taking notes as well throughout our entire conversation tonight. I've taken down a particular note to revisit the exhibit that Ari was referencing on the website, make sure that is continues to reflect the latest plan that has been up there some time. So I want to make sure that is as accurate as we can make it, and add some dimensioning to it to try to address your exact question, including calling out the setback area, as well as the other areas that are in addition to that. If I had to venture a guess, Lori, right off the top of my head, of the 5 acres, I think if you were to add up the required setback along the west, north, and east sides, it probably comes to something like a third of an acre, or maybe 4/10 of an acre of that total, if you were to try to carve that out as a separate number.
I think, David, that would be helpful to have that, so we get a better handle on it, and then the effort is recognized for what it is.
Yes, and also, I have one more question. And that is, in the DEIR, you refer to X number of 500-person events and 2,000-person events. And I'm wondering, what are those? Are those public events? Are those private Harvard Westlake events? What are those? Because they sound astronomically large to me.
Those you're referring to, I believe, are when you use the combination of 500 and 2,000, I think that falls into the category of Harvard Westlake special events. For example, last week we had opening convocation for the school from approximately 9 in the morning to 10 in the morning. All of our students from 7th grade all the way through 12th grade attend that event, as do all of our employees. And as a school community, we're approximately 2,000 individuals. So in theory, that is the type of event that we were contemplating when we looked at a 2,000-person special event. 500-person special event, would be the cap. Those would be things like if there were, an alumni reunion for a couple of classes. We hold them in sequences of 5. So bring back a couple of alumni classes for their annual reunion. Another example might be, and we do on occasion host educational conferences where we are bringing in not just our own attendees, but attendees from other schools. And so the ability to use the interior of the gymnasium for something like that, which is non-athletic and therefore would fall into that special event category. I should also mention, though, that the documentation also refers to public special events, and those are also denominated as up to 500 attendees. Those are items that we are more than happy to host, should there be the desire to host them, or not, if there isn't the need for them. What we envisioned, I know, are long traditions that Studio City has held for things like movies in the park, or to the extent that the sound engineering can be tackled, to have a string concert one afternoon. I'm hearing from your voice, Lori, that you wouldn't be interested in the string concert, so maybe that's a bad idea. But
I like string concerts, just not there.
All right, well, that was what was meant to as a placeholder, because if we don't analyze those and don't account for them in our sound analyses and our traffic analyses, we don't have any ability to host them, even if they are desired by the community at large. So,
Okay.
yeah.
I appreciate your answers. I really do. Last question. How did the 500 and 2,000 people get there?
For the school events, those would both trigger mandatory shuttling from the upper school campus. Once we anticipate that there are 300 or more participants, spectators really, in any event, athletics or otherwise, there is mandatory shuttling back and forth between Harvard Westlake's campus on Coldwater and River Park.
David, has that been published anywhere?
Yes.
If it has, I apologize.
Yeah, it is in the project description, which is chapter 2 of the draft EIR.
I will clearly be coming back to you.
Yeah, I would, what I would do myself is to open up that section and search for the word shuttle. I don't know the page number off as I'm searching here.
That's okay. If we did, we'd think you were showing up.
Chip,
Or
may
make
I
it up.
interject before we get too far down the line? David had referenced section 2, page 34, and section 2, page 3 of the DEIR in reference to how it had changed from the public access. I had the time to look that up while other people were speaking, and the only change, the verbiage is the same. The only change is that instead of saying Studio City-based nonprofit organizations, it now says nonprofit organizations. And I would imagine that change would have to have been met for the two partners to be able to participate, since neither of them are based, the one that's in West LA and the Boy and Girls Club, which is in Burbank. But the verbiage is the same, David. I just reread it. Just throw that out there.
Yeah, sorry, my comment was intended to refer to the Studio City limitation, which was the language in the EIR.
It still references organizations. So I just want to make sure that my query to you and what the information I'd like to get from you is, what can the average Joe access if you're not part of an organization or a team? Thank you. Just wanted to clarify. Thank you.
And where did the shuttles park?
The shuttles are all based out of, if you can picture in your mind's eye the site plan, there's a roundabout that's been developed on the southern side of the property adjacent to the gymnasium. That is where all shuttles, buses, rideshare vehicles would be required to drop off and pick up.
Okay, thank you.
Michael, I think you are next, sir. You're muted again.
Okay. I know Alexander's been waiting, so I will ask a question and it can be answered later, which is basically, maybe Terry knows the answer to this. What, is there a current baseline of Studio City residents currently using the property? Do we know if it's daily, weekly, or monthly? How many current residents, just so I'm trying to get a sense of what's the baseline now?
Over 100,000 people visit use the property currently.
How many though
year.
are Studio City residents that I'm looking for? And is that annual, the 100,000?
Annually 100,000.
Okay,
And
got it.
from information that I have that I don't want to go into right now, but I'll present it at the next meeting. And easily 50% or more are Studio City Sherman Oaks residents. And I say Sherman Oaks because they border us to Toluca
Got
Lake.
it.
I mean,
Thank you.
neighbor.
Thank you. That was my question. Just trying to get a sense of. Thank
Michael,
you.
if I may, my understanding of how that calculation was derived was to take the average number of daily users and multiply by 365 in order to reach the 100,000 total.
Oh, you mean if they're a repeat user, it's counting them every day they show?
Correct.
Yes,
Yeah,
that's
no,
correct.
I'm trying to get a sense of how many actual residents are currently
Yeah.
using.
The closest thing, Michael, that I'm aware of is, and I can't recall whether it's in the EIR. I think it is. It may be in an appendix, a technical appendix. There was a survey that was conducted for tennis users done by zip code over the course
You
of.
could answer this off. I'm really sensitive to Alexander.
Sure.
So send me the info.
Alexander,
I'm just trying to
it's
gather
okay.
the data.
Michael?
Thank you.
Alexander and I are going to hold we're going to hold Alexander's discussion of the artificial turf and the carbon sequestration for the next meeting, because I did promise the hard out at 9, which gives us 18 minutes. This has been productive and gives us some solid next steps. So I think.
Okay. I'm just sensitive to his time and
No. And he's also
just trying to
an hour
gather
ahead.
the info. Got it.
So I'm sorry, David, for standing on you. So, I mean, I think that is one of the questions is like, who's using it now? Is it a regional asset? Is it a local asset? What is the nature of them? What is the volume of them? What do you anticipate that looking like with a regional versus local? And what does the number and demographic composition? I mean, it sounds like you're planning on more people coming in than are currently using the property, which has merit other than disturbance to the neighborhood. Could you flesh out where that's going, or is that something we could do now or we should do later?
Chip, I'd really appreciate if David has other studies. I have some, and I'd be happy to bring them to our next meeting. And I'd love, David, if you would send me what studies you have on the current usage of the property. That would be great. I did go not only from the DEIR, but I do have some other data. So, but I'd really love to see yours.
Do we dispute the direction it's going in, though?
No, I think it would all feed in, because, like, for instance, if you're talking about users and what the and what is currently being calculated is people who buy a bucket of balls, let's say, you might have 3 people share a bucket of balls. You know, you have people who come and commune with the community, and they might buy a cup of coffee and not play a sport. So the usage of the property is multi-level, and there's different ways to gather the data. But I think if we had all the data, we would have a clearer picture. So I'd just like to see what else is out there.
Okay, I'm going to go to Patty. Patty, you're up. Patty Kirby.
Hello, I did unmute. Hi, everybody. I have one comment and 2 questions. To me, calling this a park is very misleading to the public. When I think of a park, I think of a park like North Hollywood Park. This description of this development project is, to me, a sports complex. That's my statement. I've been wanting to say that a long time. Then my question is, are you counting the nonprofit partners as part of the public access that you're giving, that you're saying you're giving out to the public, is including these events that Angel City Sports and the Burbank Boys and Girls Club as part of public access versus what Terry was trying to say, the average Joe coming in for public access. I commend you for partnering with such great and nonprofits. I have a disabled son myself, so I think it's wonderful. But I just say, are these events going to bring to this smallish property in the middle of a residential area? Thank you. Oh, one other question. With the shuttling, I can't see how this wouldn't interfere with the fire department entrance and exit during a disaster or in an emergency. Has that been very well thought through as far as no backup in front of the firehouse? That's it.
So was that 4 yeses, David?
Most of my yeses were coming with Patty, your last comment about studying the operation of the fire station. I don't want to. I don't want to try to recreate from memory, but it is an entire section of the draft EIR that looks at the ingress and egress and turning movements and queue lengths and I think we can look to that in future meetings in detail.
And I think we can also queue up what buckets of population the folks, be it Angel City Sports, be it other folks, when we take a look at the calendar, so we can answer that question. Peter, I believe you're the next. Adele, are you back for the same topic? I think you only get a minute. Go for it.
You want me or you want Peter?
Go ahead, Adele. You're on the left-hand side of my screen.
Okay, I didn't talk about this topic. Did I? No, I didn't. I've got a couple of things. One thing I just want to say, I don't know of any conversation, not that I know of all the conversations you might have had with SCRA about public access. I do know that I did have a conversation with you, Ari, about public access. And I tried to talk to you about how you unilaterally, the school, Harvard Westlake, unilaterally deciding who gets to come and go there is not public access. And that I had suggested you trying to do joint use agreements with USTA or with other organizations so that.
Adele, could we get to I'm sorry for interrupting. Let us see what they have planned at that point.
Okay.
And then let's have a conversation with some meat on the bone.
Okay, but I'm just saying that what I've heard tonight is more of the same. It's not.
Right.
Yeah.
Because we.
So
let's
okay,
have the meeting.
okay, and nonprofit access is not public access. So I have two other things that have come up. One is when you shuttle people, where are they parking? Are they parking up at the school? Because you have whatever, that's a question. And then the other thing about the fire department in the EIR, I just want to point out that it is suggested that because of the ingress and the egress and the traveling, that the fire department be moved to another location. And that was one of the suggestions that the DEIR had. So I thought that was pretty interesting that this project would actually might force them to have to move. That's all.
Adele, I'm sorry, that comes as a surprise to me because I'm not aware of any language that would indicate that in draft EIR.
It's in there. Yeah.
It was not a recommendation of the project team.
I'll go find it if you want.
That would be wonderful. Thank you.
Peter, I'm sorry for the stutter step. You're up.
Thank you. I wanted to circle back to Melanie brought up my point about the 3D rendering. Just for clarity's sake, I don't know, you guys seem a little surprised about it. Just want to let you know it's not expensive. What I did was self-funded and it was around the price of a fancy concert ticket. And it didn't take all that long to create. Actually, it was just less than a day. Perhaps there's more detail that needs to be added. For everybody else listening, the beauty of it is there's really no way to use, not saying it was, but usually you look at a rendering of a project and it somehow looks surreal. And typically there's a thing that people will do called forced perspective, which tends to make things in a more favorable look, smaller or larger. And this takes all of that out because we can look at it at any angle. And anyway, so it's really not an expensive thing.
Yeah, and Peter, if we could, subsequent to this meeting, share something so the Harvard Westlake folks can see what it is, I think everyone
Sure.
would find that to be a useful tool.
Peter, if I'm not mistaken, you included an image in your comment letter that you submitted to the city that appeared to be generated from a modeling tool such as you're describing. Is that correct? Am I?
Since I'm involved in two projects, and I can't remember which one you're referring to, but I'm happy to email you an example of what, actually the one that I did for Sportsman's. Also, just, I don't have the notes in front of me, but I did attend the meeting at one of the meetings at the 6th, and I did take copious notes. And my general feeling here, and I will have those notes available at the next meeting, this project, the uses have grown significantly from what I remember at that meeting, and I will pull up my notes for next time. Thank you.
Goat Puppet, go ahead. He seems to have left the premises. Nope.
What are you doing? I turned it on. Yes. Okay. Yes, and as you see, the little tiny project, so nice and cute, has grown and grown and expanded bigger and bigger and bigger into more uses. So you have these blaring speakers out. Yes, as young men suit up and put on a football uniform and crush their little heads into each other, causing brain damage. Yes, compared to hitting a little white ball into a little hole. Now, which one do you want? Well, we all want the latter. But Pauper Krikorian wanted the former, and he sold his house for a couple of $1 million with apparent alleged unpermitted extensions on his kitchen and bathroom. We're still looking for those permits. Maybe you have them, developers, yes. So there's not much we can do but take copious notes and turn them over to the FBI at 213-473-7008. Hey, that's the chair of Plum. Yes, its name is Marquisi. And I hear that he's turning on you. Yes, he might even be the council president come January. So
we're trying to stay
that's all we
focused
can
on
do,
public
Evan.
access. Thank you so much.
We can only be like Glenn Bailey and be snitches and hopefully not get stitches. Well, that was
Thank you.
yeah,
Michael,
somebody
go ahead, Michael.
I should have just lowered my hand. Continue.
Okay, fair enough. Patrice, you might be taking us home.
Yeah, I hope so. Anyways, just quickly, we really didn't talk too much about it, but I'm just wondering if the traffic study was done during COVID. If we have some dates on when that traffic study was done, that would be interesting. Thank you, everybody. Have a good night.
David, do you know when the traffic study was done? Was it prior to March of 20?
I am searching for it.
Okay. And we can
don't
circle
wanna-
back on that as well.
Yeah, let me look and get back to you.
Okay, it's 8:55. I promised everyone a heart out, and I have a 12-year-old Labrador who's looking at me like, you better take me on now. So that might take priority. Thank you, sir. All right, so this is the first of its kind. I think it's positive for us to sit together. I think we have some interesting areas to explore moving forward. And I'm hoping that every conversation we have will be more and more productive and easier as we get through. I appreciate everyone who has been taking the time to join us tonight to prepare for this, and I look forward to everyone's participation later. The, sorry for being rude, I was texting with Alexander, who's got a lot to talk about with the artificial turf. It's a meaty topic that shouldn't be slammed in the back of a meeting, and we were not able today to get to any kind of conversation about tree canopy. The sequence of kind of, there's a lot we want to talk about there as well. So I believe what we will do is schedule our next meeting to go to just those two topics, which would be D and E from today's agenda. It'll probably still be a 2-hour meeting, maybe 90 minutes if we're lucky. And in the meantime, Harvard Westlake folks, we will reach out to you with some notes on this. We'll obviously be a public agenda, but we'll send up some notes to follow up with you on the 3 topics we did discuss. I appreciate everyone's help, and I'm just gonna kill the Zoom and see you all again later. Take care, everybody.
Thank you, Chip.